So in this module, we're going to take a look at the available file formats in the Movie Render Queue, along with some hidden ones. So it's worth keeping in mind that the Movie Render Queue is mainly designed for rendering image sequences, not video formats. That said, MRQ does have a few video formats available if absolutely needed. You might be wondering, well, why image sequences? What is the advantage of rendering individual images as opposed to one video format? The answer is pretty simple. So some applications work much better if you provide them with individual frame sequences. So for example, 3D camera tracking software. Many tools analyze individual frames, so if you supplied it with a video, while the file format might be smaller, interlacing and compression artifacts makes it harder, slower, and it won't look as good. Another example is noise reduction in post. This is often temporal, which means that it depends on the previous frame to calculate the denoising of the next frame. Video is generally more compressed and won't look as good, making your denoising process not as good. Another reason for this is stability. If your render crashes halfway through, or you suffer a power outage at frame 500, you can pick up where you left off. Whereas if you're rendering a video, you need to re-render the entire sequence. So let's explore the available file format options. So with the Movie Render Queue open here, let's click on the Unsaved Config button to open up our render settings. In a window that pops up, we're going to click on the Settings tab here, and you'll find the available file formats right here. We've got BMP, EXR, JPEG, PNG, Wave Audio, Apple ProRes, Command Line Encoder, and Final Cut Pro XML. You're likely not going to be using these two at all. Now you'll see almost all of these are image file formats except for Apple ProRes. Now in Unreal 4.27, Apple ProRes is enabled by default, but if you're using Unreal 4.26 or earlier, you're going to have to go enable a plugin. So we're going to go to the Settings tab up top here, go to Plugins, and in the search bar, you're going to search for ProRes. And you'll see we have Apple ProRes Media. Like I said, in 4.27 it is enabled by default, but if you're using an earlier version of Unreal, enable this and you'll have access to one of the few video file formats available in the Movie Render Queue. That said, there's another hidden file format available that is accessible via a plugin as well. So up in a search bar again, we're going to search for Avid. And you'll see here we have access to Avid DNX, which is another video format available. This is a high quality video format just like Apple ProRes, so if you absolutely need video, using Avid DNX or Apple ProRes are the ways to do that. So you can enable it and restart the engine. The file format you use is entirely dependent on your needs. If you just need a very quick render, just a kind of preview, something fast, and the max quality is not important to you, feel free to use BMP, JPEG, or PNG. These are simple 8-bit formats and are usually good enough for previewing purposes. With that being said, if you need the absolute, no excuses maximum quality, you should be using the industry standard multi-layered EXR. This is quite possibly the best image format, and there's a reason why it is used in film and VFX all the time. If you're not familiar with EXR, it is easiest to not think of it as an image, but rather a container for data. Within a single EXR file, you can store render passes such as zdepth, object ID, layers, alpha, all sorts of things. Think of it as a Photoshop PSD file with a whole bunch of layers. That is EXR. On top of that, you'll see here that EXR is 16-bit, which means there is way more data in there. You're going to get a much larger range of data to work with when you're color grading your shots. Compositors will absolutely want this. You're going to have a much greater range of values in your highlights and your shadows without any clipping. We're going to explore the benefits of EXR a little bit later. But for now, if you want the max quality, just use EXR. So as you can see, the Movie Render Queue is mainly targeted toward image sequence usage. The reason for this is just because of quality, and while video can be compressed and interlaced for smaller file size footprint, the compression leads to lesser image quality, which completely defeats the whole purpose of the Movie Render Queue. Image sequences, on the other hand, offer a maximum quality, no excuses option.